Broadcasting from Studio 202 at the Sprigget Technology Center in Navasota, Texas, it's NOV Live. Now, let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to NOV Live. My name is Shelby Dumaine and I'm your host this morning. We have a really exciting show for you today. This is actually part one of 3 sessions we're going to be doing today. So stick around after this show. We'll be back live again for a second session with some more experts. And what is the topic of these discussions? I'm so glad you asked. It is CCUS, or Carbon Capture, Utilization, and Storage. And specifically, this first session is CCUS 101. If you're new to CCUS, if you've heard this acronym, and you say, oh my gosh, the energy industry has enough acronyms, what does this one mean? You've come to the right place. We're going to talk about that today. And before we get to our experts, who I'm so excited to introduce you to, I do just want to mention that we are live. So if you have any questions at any point in the show, you can participate in a live Q&A session. We'll do that there at the end. So you can put your questions in the comments where you're watching. We have folks keeping an eye on those, getting those questions ready. So put those in and we'll be happy to answer your questions at the end of the show. Without further ado, I want to introduce our incredible guests. We have Kamalpreet Kaur and Salim Deshmukh. And can we start off? Maybe I'll start with Kamal. Can you introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Of course. So I work for the Low Carbon Solutions team here in NOV, and I am the commercial leader. So my main focus is going to be on CCUS as well as hydrogen.
Excellent. And Salim?
My name is Salim Deshmukh. I'm Technology and Strategy Manager for Low Carbon Solutions Group. My role is technology portfolio management, technology growth, as well as technical sales.
Excellent. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about CCUS and why it's so important for the overall energy transition. But I maybe want to start, taking a step back a little bit. And Kamal, can you tell us a little bit about what is CCUS? What does that mean?
Of course, really good question. So CCUS is an acronym, and it stands for Carbon Capture, Utilization, and Storage. So basically, you're taking carbon dioxide or CO2 out from the ambient air or from a point source of emission. So that means anything that can be a big plant, such as a cement plant, a steel plant, a natural gas plant. And you're going to take all of that carbon dioxide along with all the other gases, separate it, and then take the carbon dioxide, and then you're going to make it ready for it to be transported and stored. There is that utilization term in it too. Unfortunately, we're not that big to the point where we are able to utilize that 1 million ton of carbon that we're capturing from a plant. So right now, the most feasible way is to go ahead and store it, or for EOR, which is enhanced oil recovery. So those are 2 main ways that we are utilizing all the carbon that we're capturing currently. But in the future, there are multiple possibilities. So you can create cement out of it. You can go ahead and create diamonds. You can create carbonated drinks. And hopefully in the future, we get to that point where we are utilizing and creating that entire value chain to where the carbon is captured, as well as it is being used, as well as it is being properly stored underground. So in the most simplest term, that is what carbon capture, utilization, and storage is.
Yeah, and I think it's such a critical part of the energy transition as well. I think a lot of people usually think of what are these new energy sources that we can find and use, but carbon capture is another part of that puzzle. And how do we, using the existing ones, how do we still make those part of the transition? So Salim, I wanted to ask you that question is where does CCUS fit within energy transition, and why is it so important?
Again, very excellent question. So it all goes back to Paris Agreement, where many countries agreed to limit the global warming to around 1.5 degrees C compared to what we had pre-industrial era. And in order to achieve that, we will basically have to capture about 43% of the CO2 by 2030 that we would be emitting then. And that's a huge task in itself, because this corresponds to almost closely 20 gigatons of CO2. And where does it coming? Where is so much CO2 coming from, basically? So we all know that the world needs a lot of energy, and it's continuously growing because world's population is increasing. And most of the electricity that is produced today, or all the energy that is used for industrial application, majority of that is still produced from some sort of hydrocarbon source, gas or coal, to name it. And Of course, the share of the renewables is increasing day by day, but still, as of today, it's a very minor fraction of the total contribution. Um, it's not easy to replace all the energy or electricity production from hydrocarbons immediately. For that, so the renewable share has to grow from one end, and the share of the electricity or energy produced from hydrocarbons has to go down from other end, and we will meet a point in many years down the line where the share of the renewable energy will be sufficient to basically minimize or eliminate the power required from hydrocarbons. So at the moment, of course, it means a lot of infrastructure. There are certain limitations of intermittency of the renewable power as well. So solutions will have to be developed to overcome those as well. So hydrocarbons will continue to be with us for many decades until we have sufficient renewable capacity. And as long as we have hydrocarbons, we will produce CO2, and that CO2 will have to be removed in one way or another to limit to 1.5 degrees C global warming. In my opinion, I think CCUS can contribute in 4 major areas. So first, the most prominent one is reducing the CO2 impact of the power consumption as well as all the industrial usage of energy. Then it can definitely play a role to remove the CO2 from hard-to-abate industry, for example, cement or steel industry. And one of the most important thing is also it can enable low-carbon hydrogen production. We hear a lot of acronym like blue hydrogen, for instance, where you produce hydrogen from methane, at the same time separate the CO2 and sequester it. And last but not the least, of course, we can remove the CO2 from the air as well by using DAC or direct air capture in order to reduce the CO2 content of the environment itself. So CCUS has a role to play, and it's a very important role to play many decades down the line until renewable sources have been developed sufficiently.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I have a question I want to ask both of y'all. We'll start maybe with Kamal. I can't let y'all off the hook too easily. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that come with CCUS?
Of course. Like any new industry, this is a brand new industry. That means new technology. Surprisingly, it's picked up a lot in the past couple of years, but it has been around since the 1970s. We have studies and we've had projects that have been mostly for EOR purposes, but they've been going around for a long time. But now, since we're with the COP, like Salim mentioned, we are getting more aggressive with our climate goals. So that means new technology. So right now, the solvent and sorbent is going to be the most, in terms of the TRL level or the technology readiness level, is going to be at the highest point of commercialization. But then you have other technology like membrane technology, cryogenic technology. So all of these technologies are at the brink of like becoming commercial and being widely accepted. So with that comes a lot of investment, comes a lot of R&D, comes a lot of initial money that has to be put in. And right now, and for a lot of our countries, because this is a global industry, it is going to be funded by the governments or by the policies. And as you see that progress in the future, you have the private investors, like the private equity firms or the banks that are waiting for that industry to pick up before they put their own money into it. So in a sense, it kind of becomes a chicken or the egg game to like, do we wait for it to completely be this huge industry before you put the money in, or we go ahead and start putting in money early, because you have 2 types of investors. You have the people that are wanting to see the changes or wanting to see profits as soon as possible. And then for any new technology or any new company, it takes a couple of years for it to be fully functioning in order for us to get that point of standardization to where we are able to receive and see those returns, and we're able to perfect that technology for a more cost effectiveness. So the biggest challenge is the investment, it is also the cost, and it is also the political changing climate of not only the U.S. with the it has been pretty positive in the past with the Inflation Reduction Act and 45Q that has increased in order for us to store the carbon from $50 a ton to $85 a ton. That has really kickstarted a lot of these initiatives. But how long is that going to last? So that's a huge challenge. I think it's a fairly new industry, but we have just in Texas seen Proposition 5, which is a lot of our Texas schools are putting in money and funding into their research. So you have the national laboratories, not only here in the state of Texas, also in the entire US, that are putting in money into the funding and into the research. So as you see these challenges come up, there are also ways and solutions and money and interest that is being put into the industry. So it is a two-way stream when you put things into that perspective.
Mm-hmm. And Salim?
Yeah, so I think very well said, Kamal. Yeah, when we talk about the new industry or any industry, when we try to do business, we think of making money, making positive baselines. So, but CO2 is a little bit different picture. So we are going to emit around 40 to 50 gigatons of CO2 every year. And unfortunately, we cannot convert all of it into some sort of product or usable product that can be sold. So it's a sort of waste management. So in order for this industry to pick up or kick off, at least for now, government incentives or some sort of policies in terms of taxes will be required to get a sort of push. Kamal touched upon the technology side of the things as well. So of course, we have solvent-based, cryogenic, membranes, adsorbents. But unfortunately, solvent is the only one that has been tested, tried, and commercially available and can be implemented on large scale. And all others are different TRL levels, technology readiness level, and a few years down the line, they would also be commercially available. But at the moment, it's only solvent-based. But unfortunately, solvent-based technology requires a lot of energy, which comes at a cost, meaning you will typically have very high dollar per ton value of capture cost associated with solvent technologies. Another important aspect or challenge, if you might say, is that it's like an ocean of different types of flue gases we are talking about, different sources, meaning different technologies will fit into different applications. Cost of the capture will also vary depending on the type of the flue gas and how difficult or easy it is to capture. And then those costs could vary from, let's say, $20 per ton all the way to $50 per ton. But that's where not it ends. So when you have captured, you need to do something with it. And as I mentioned, we cannot convert into something usable. So what is going to happen is most of the CO2 will be sequestered or stored for hundreds of years. So in order to enable that, of course, we need to condition it, to transport it, and then inject it. So the conditioning and transport aspect also has a cost tag associated that could be anything between $15 to $25, I would say. And for the long-term storage as well, so the cost will be something similar, $30 to $40 per ton of CO2. So all in all, if you add up, so these costs will be more than, for example, the IRA or $85 per ton, or any EU ETS, for example, which is around €100 per ton. So these are some of the challenges on the business case level or commercial level. But of course, as Kamal coined chicken and egg, yeah, it's very much true, because you can capture the CO2 today at a cost, but what to do with it? You need the infrastructure to transport the CO2, be it by pipeline or ships, and also you need injection sites available to inject so much of CO2 as well. So when it comes to injection, of course, there is certain policies or legalizations in terms of permitting. That also takes time. At times, it takes 5 to 6 years. So all the things have to go in hand in order to make sure that there is least risk from all the parties, and the banks or investors are willing to invest into it to make it happen, basically. So on a positive note, of course, most of the companies will start with like low-hanging fruits. For example, take an example of natural gas, where we separate the CO2 anyway. So as of now, just that nothing has been done with it. So it's an opportunity to put the infrastructure for transport and injection, and basically then you can inject CO2 for sequestration. There are some of the oil and gas majors are taking bold step acquiring pipeline companies. In Europe, European majors are also planning to construct CO2 highways. So a lot of positive things happening as well. But I think slowly and gradually it will happen, and it will take time to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Time's usually what it comes down to, isn't it? And I think maybe this is only a challenge from my view as being on the marketing team, but I know NOV is historically known as more in the oil and gas space, and so I want to ask a little bit about where do we fit in the CCUS conversation. Salim, do you mind answering that, or what are our offerings? I suppose.
Sure, absolutely. No, sure. Thank you. So NOV is basically known for rigs. We are coming from upstream oil and gas industry, although NOV also plays a role outside oil and gas, quite a lot, I would say. But what value we bring into the CCUS is our expertise from natural gas processing. So we have a process house called Wellstream Processing, which is I would proudly say probably top 2 process houses in the world, having decades of experience for natural gas processing capabilities, very strong team, very strong supply chain, very strong project execution models. So this is what we are taking forward into the CCS value chain, because we see a very striking synergies between the natural gas processing value chain as well as CCUS value chains. I can give you a few examples. So from natural gas, you remove CO2 using membranes or solvents. If you look at the flue gas applications, the main difference is that, okay, you have nitrogen instead of methane, and also you have some oxygen into the flue gas. That's the main difference. That demands some special solvents, for instance. But if you look on the technology level, be it membranes or be it solvents, it's exactly same. It's more or less exactly same what is required for natural gas processing. So we have the full competence, full capabilities to deliver the capture plants, as well as conditioning, meaning CO2 deoxygenation and dehydration packages as well. And even if you look at the technologies that are required for natural gas dehydration, so they are typically triethylene glycol or desiccants like sorbate or molecular sieves. These are exactly the same technologies are applicable for CO2 dehydration as well, and pick and choose depending on the application and suitability of the application, so to say. So this is about processing packages, but NOV is so huge, so that NOV have other business units as well, who have flexible pipes as well as CO2 transfer systems. Those are specifically suited for offshore environment to transfer CO2 from one floating object to injection well, or between 2 floating objects, for example, transferring between 2 ships. Other example I can give is composite pipes. Surprisingly, NOV has delivered so many of composite pipes, especially in US for CO2 transport and EOR related application. So in my opinion, probably very few companies in the world who has such a strong portfolio that can be applied to almost entire value chain. Yeah, I think so. I see very good future for NOV into the entire value chain, which of course we are continually trying to improve because we are a technology company. And perhaps it's a bit better to clarify here is that we are a technology company. We are not an EPC company, so we work very closely with EPC companies as well as end users or operators of the CCS plant, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It sounds like, we are the experts in technology and equipment for the energy industry, and that applies here as well. It's a lot of that knowledge transfers, that equipment transfers, and we can be a very important part of that value. So thank you. And before I let either of y'all go, I know we'll see you a little bit more in the later sessions, but I do just have one audience question that I wanted to bring up. And this came from online. They were wondering how, I guess, the everyday person can be part of CCUS, support CCUS. What is that role of, say, the person at home watching this?
Of course, I think the main way that the general public can be involved with the whole CCUS industry, basically, to capture it, it is to be also mindful of, right now, the majority of our support is coming from the politics and from the government, is to be supported of these policies that benefit the industry, to be mindful, to be educated about the topic of CCUS, at the same time be on the lookout of the newer technology that is coming up. There isn't something that we can just put on our car and then have it capture carbon. I wish there was, but we haven't gotten it to that point. And to be honest with you, the real positive effect is going to be by capturing it from a bigger source, from these really big industries and companies. But at the same time, just having the regular person know what CCUS is. I know that electric cars and EVs are just so popular right now. And then we've gotten to a point where we are doing something about the emission just by our daily commute from home to work. So when it comes to the regular person, I think to be educated about this matter is a really big stepping stone.
So what you're saying is tuning into this session and the ones later today.
Is correct. Yes.
I had to do it. It was right there.
It's right here.
Well, speaking of, in about 10 minutes, we'll be back live. We're going to talk a little bit about CO2 conditioning. We have Brent Staley and Dieter Muller coming here on the show for that. So thank you both so much, Kamal and Salim. We'll see you both. This isn't goodbye. We'll see you in a few minutes. So everyone watching, join us again in about 10 minutes, and we'll talk a little bit with Brent and Dieter. Thank you for joining today, and I'll talk to you later.